And we're recording. All right. Hello, everyone. Today I'm joined by Lawrence Anton. And today we're going to be reviewing a video that he did with Channel 4 on antinatalism. And the first clip that was put out onto the internet was about, what was it, about 3 minutes long?
Yeah.
And then they released a longer version, 5 minutes long. But the original conversation was how long?
2 hours.
It was a 2-hour conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah, highly edited. But we'll go through this and see what our thoughts are on it. Did you have anything that you want to say before we start?
Well, I guess we'll like point out specifics when we actually watch the video. But yeah, if anyone has seen it before, like it's very highly edited, and they make it look like I say things that I didn't. And also maybe this is something that we wouldn't specifically point to because it's not there, but they removed a lot of stuff I said as well. So it looks in the video generally like I'd lean quite heavily on some arguments, but they just left out everything I said about other arguments.
Okay. All right, ready to go?
Yeah.
Cool.
Someone.
I'm a single mum.
Well, you've done something really horrible there.
So,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, like, straight off the bat. So this is all editing. So I've had so many people message me saying, "Oh, hey, I saw this video of you," and you know they'll say a couple of things, but they will always inevitably bring up the fact of like, "Oh, you know, I think you were a bit harsh, you know, when you said, you know, I think it looks like I'm saying she's a horrible person or she did something horrible," and it's all editing. Like, she says she's a single mum, and then like 10 minutes later, I'm explaining something, and I say, "Well, you've done a really horrible thing there," but I'm using the word "you" to mean general you, not her specifically. But they just edited it to make it look like I was telling her she was a horrible person. In fact, at the very start of the conversation, before we said anything else, anything on the topic, I said to her, like, look, I don't want to make this personal for either of us, because I'm assuming it's a personal issue to you. Otherwise, they wouldn't have asked you to come on the show. So, you know, I'm not going to frame any of this in terms of you specifically, unless you specifically ask me something about yourself, which she actually did. But other than that, I didn't make anything personal. They've just edited it like that.
Yeah, the first couple of seconds, it sounds like you're being a single mom. You're like, "Oh, you did something really bad," and yeah, that was unfortunate editing right off the bat. And that, unfortunately, is like the first 3 seconds. You know, it's like, what kind of impression are you going to get for an individual? I don't know if it's like 3 seconds or 7 seconds, but it's like a certain amount of time when you first introduce someone, like you get your first impressions on them and like how you feel. So yeah, I feel like this setup is kind of unfortunate on this one, but yeah.
I'm a single mum.
Well, you've done something really horrible there. You've dragged someone and forced them into a position they didn't want to be in. No one ever asked to be born.
I feel like you're on another planet.
Yep.
So what? Yeah, one thing I just wanted to say is, you know, like there's the classic line that I use there, like, "No one ever asked to be born." It's like such a classic stroppy teenager thing to say. I mean, people perceive it in different ways, but I think generally in the video I come across a bit like, I don't know, of a freak. Whether that was actually me or it's just the way they've edited it with the music and stuff like that, I don't know. But yeah, if I had my time again, I probably would have worded things differently, because that just sounds so much like I'm a fucking emo in my parent, you know, like, yeah.
Having children is obviously such a joy and a great thing in life. It's a natural feeling. As a woman, we all have that maternal instinct as well.
My view on biological children, I don't think people should have them.
I'm gonna have to stop you and just ask you why.
No one ever asked to be born. When you give birth, You're choosing to do something to someone else, you're creating them. They never asked for it. You know, you can't get consent from someone to bring them into the world.
So you started off with a consent argument, eh? What led you to start off with that one?
So like I said before we started watching the video, I used all of the main arguments that I know, at least, in the 2-hour conversation. But I did start with the consent argument, and the reason I did that, I don't think it was that much of a conscious decision. I think partly it was maybe just like the first thing that came to mind. It just came out, but maybe the reason for that was that, like, I wasn't having a conversation with, and the people who are viewing the video are not going to be like these hardcore philosophy people. So to just drop something like, you know, the axiological asymmetry straight away, maybe wouldn't sit right. Whereas everyone kind of well, I mean, you could argue not that well, but everyone understands what consent means, and they can understand the very basic idea that, you know, you can't ask someone if they want to be born, so you've got to force it on them. I think that's a very simple concept to understand. So maybe that subconsciously played a part in me sort of leading with that one.
Yeah. Okay.
But I wouldn't personally say that's the strongest argument. I think it's just the first one that came out.
Okay.
Sorry.
You're choosing to do something to someone else, you're creating them. They never asked for it. You know, you can't get consent from someone to bring them into the world.
But it is a natural process.
But just because...
Yeah, starting off with but it's natural.
The classic.
The classic, yeah. You're going to address this, though.
Something's natural doesn't mean it's right. There are many things that happen in nature which we would say that's bad, like malaria, you know, animals rape each other, things like this. If you look at any other situation in our daily lives where we would talk about consent, should not act if you can't get consent from someone.
I'm a single mum, and I have a son who's 9 years old, and just before I turned 20,
I just want to clarify there, because I do actually, they left it out. I did actually explain this, but the one thing I just maybe wanted to say on the point of consent is, like, the nuance doesn't escape me that, you know, there are times when we have to violate someone's consent because it is in their better interest. You know, the classic example is like giving a kid a vaccine or something like this, or some medication generally. But I gave the example in this of, which I guess is the classic example, is like, you know, you're at a party, someone gets a bit too drunk and like falls asleep on a sofa, and, you know, they stay, you know, they can't make it home, obviously, so they sleep at the house, and then for some reason you're sleeping there as well. You know, that's the classic example where if you can't get consent from someone, you obviously shouldn't do anything with their body. In that scenario, which, yeah, I gave that example, but they left it out just to provide some more sort of like context.
Gotcha. Okay.
Decided that I was going to be a surrogate, and I was UK's youngest surrogate to triplets.
I can totally understand that people have this biological drive. Nothing's stopping me, like I could do it. Well, actually, I had a vasectomy 2 weeks ago, so there is something stopping me.
There was nothing.
Okay, well,
there was nothing stopping me.
What made you make that decision so young?
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to say here is, going into this, I never actually intended to say that, but I think I was just quite nervous at the start, and this bit of video is from about maybe like 5 minutes into the conversation, and I was told that they weren't going to use it, which they obviously ended up doing anyway. Yeah. And, like, you know, I can't do anything about it. Like, I mean, it's out now, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, what are you gonna say? Oh yeah, one thing I just wanted to say about this, and maybe it comes up later, I didn't actually pick up on this at all at the time, but other people have since, is that she really sort of like takes me to task on the fact that I've made this big decision when I'm so young, when she'd already dropped 4 kids by the time she was 21.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
honestly, that did not occur to me at the time. I just didn't realize the hypocrisy. But yeah.
Yeah.
Young.
Because I know already there is something stopping me.
There was nothing.
Okay, well,
There was nothing stopping me
what made you make that decision so young?
because I know already that I'm not going
At the age of 23, I did not know half of what I know now.
And yet she created multiple people. So like, and it's so young, right? Like,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
could just easily retort with that same thing. I don't think that's appropriate, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it just completely went over my head. You know, with the first kid she had, was an accident. She just decided to keep it, which from even if you remove ethics for a minute and you sort of just talk about from the position of like, oh, you're, you know, how experienced are you, how capable are you, stuff like that. With that instance, you can maybe, you know, sort of understand her because she was put in a situation which she, you know, she didn't realize she was going to be in. Obviously she knew there was a risk because she was having sex, but you know, she was put in a situation where she, you know, she found she was pregnant and then she had to make some sort of decision. She was young, maybe a lot of things were going through her head, and she
Right.
ended up having the kid, you know. So maybe from that perspective, we need to come from a place of understanding. But with the second one of having the 3 kids, like she purposefully went out with the intention of doing that.
Yeah.
So that one, I, you know, would say you shouldn't really be afforded any sort of sympathy, really. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, because, well, I mean, sympathy. I don't know. I mean, like, I sympathize with everybody, but the
Yeah.
when it comes to like the decision making, I feel like the weight of the, so like if you decide to get a vasectomy at an early age versus creating new life, I feel like the importance, the severity of it is much higher when you're creating new sentient beings. So again, saying that you're so young, I don't really know at that age what, you know, what I know. It just I don't know, I just felt like it was a weird take to put on you, but not self-reflect on her decision as well.
Yeah, I just think like if you know if you're going to make any major decision when you're younger that you could eventually regret, having a vasectomy is probably the best one you can do because
Yeah.
it's literally only going to affect you.
Yep.
So whereas, you know, if you have a kid and then you end up regretting it or it turns out to be a bad decision, you've completely fucked over 2 people, yourself and the kid, or let alone if you have triplets or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
The feelings change. I'm sure you're not the same. I'm definitely not the same person that I was when I was 19. To experience like pregnancy, I can't even put into words how that feels. Like, it's a feeling that you've never ever felt before. Like, I don't know, it kind of saddens me to know that you'll never experience that.
All of that to me just
Yeah.
Yeah, again, another thing I didn't pick up on at the time, which is so obvious, but I don't know why I didn't pick up on it, is I mean, this is sort of like a trivial thing, but she sort of makes this point about how I'm never going to sort of, you know, experience pregnancy or stuff like this. And I mean, it's obviously clearly flawed in 2 ways. I mean, one, I was never going to experience pregnancy anyway. And 2, it like just completely ignores the fact that you are juggling with someone else.
Yep.
And it's just thinking about your own interests. Like, how can this thing that's going to happen enrich my experience of life? And to hell with the consequences if you know it means something bad for someone else.
Yeah.
sounds like an ego trip. You've brought someone into existence and it's made you feel.
What did you mean by ego trip?
Yeah, people interpret ego trip in different ways, so maybe it was the wrong phrase to use, but I basically just meant like, you know how you can do things that control other people in some way, and it makes you feel it goes to your head, or like you enjoy it or something like that. So when I meant with, you know, having a kid, is like you're getting this ego trip from being able to create someone and then control them in the ways that you like. You know, oh, I'm going to have my kid learn piano or learn Arabic or something like this, like I will get to mold this little mini me in some way. All she talks about when she talks about procreation, she doesn't mention anyone else apart from herself. So that's what I meant by ego trip, is just seeing this action as something to serve your desires and, feed your own ego, I guess.
I lost you for some of that. My internet connection's is bugging out a little bit. But okay, sorry. Do you mind saying that one more time?
Yeah. So basically, what I meant was, so when some people in some situations, they can control other people in a way that will make them feel good. So in this case with creating a new life, people say things like, I'm going to have my kid learn piano or learn Arabic or something like that, and they get to mold this mini me the way they want, like a new toy or something like that. Like they get to have this supreme dominance over someone else who's in a vulnerable position. And I'm not saying, they don't look out for their vulnerable position, but they're the ones who put them in the vulnerable position in the first place. But all people do is just think about how it's going to make them feel,
Gotcha.
Yeah, when she was talking about procreation, all she was talking about was not concerned for anyone else. It was all about how it's going to make her feel good.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
All these things, yeah, that's good for you, but we can't see other people as a means to our own ends.
Okay, I'm just going to say it how it is. I feel like you're on another planet.
I can understand now that bringing someone into the world just for my selfish desires is not a good reason to do it. When you do create someone, you're bringing them into a world where you know that there are loads of bad things that could happen to them. They could be hit by a car and live with lasting pain. They could get cancer very early on, fall victim to sex trafficking, all things like this. Mm-hmm. Do you think that your selfish desire to have that kid is worth it if they live a life like that?
That's a bit crazy. Like, why are you always picking up the negative?
I did like the camera work there, where it's kind of like, I don't know, they kind of like, you pose the question and then they like zoomed in on your face, and it's like, it's kind of like asking the audience as well, in a weird way. I don't know if you noticed that. I don't know.
If they live a life like that.
Like that?
That's a bit crazy. Like, why are you always picking up the negative in this situation?
Yeah, I think like when we talk about this stuff, we do talk a lot about the negative, and I think like we should acknowledge the positive. It's like, yes, the good things are good for the one that is here, but you can prevent all these bads by not creating the person. I don't know. Because I think this is levied at a lot of antinatalists. It's like you're just focusing on the bad. And it's like, well, in a way we're putting a lot of weight on suffering, but we do acknowledge, when you are here, the good things are good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the key distinction to be made, is that, those good things are not good until someone exists to actually want them in the first place. So, for something for an experience to be good, there sort of has to be, as a prerequisite, existence to be able to experience it. And so I feel like, all of these, we could give them all these good things or whatever. It's like, well, yeah, you could, if they existed, then it would be good to give them to them. But creating them in the first place to then give them good things makes literally no sense, because it's not the creation itself which is good. You then have to satisfy the creation with things that the thing created deems, pleasurable. But why create that empty glass in the first place that you've then got to fill? Yeah.
Because that's all I'm hearing you say is, so this could happen, that could happen. So I'm sure you've had a bad experience or event some point in your life up until now. Most people have, whether it's a bad memory or you've lost someone or whatever the case is. You learn to deal and cope.
You learn to mitigate the bad things that happen to you.
But no one can just live their life in this bubble.
But bringing someone into existence, well, you've done something really horrible there. You've dragged someone and forced them into a position they didn't want to be.
See, this is the point where I was saying, you know, you've done something really horrible. That I was saying, general you.
Yeah.
Which they kind of show now, but it's like in the original trailer.
Yeah.
Being, and those bad things are happening to them, and you've done that.
Biologically, your gene pool, that will end with you.
So what's bad about that?
Yeah.
Oh, it's true.
I know. I thought, yeah, it was.
Again, I think it's like people analyzing the situation from a position of how it can serve them and fulfill their own ego. Like, it literally makes no difference to you what happens after you die, really. You know, it can be of some concern once you're still in existence. You know, if you know, like people you care about, if they are going to be okay after you die and stuff like that. But in terms of like carrying on your lineage, like it's just pure ego trip. It's just like, you know, I want to live on in some way, and so I am going to throw more sort of bodies on the pile so that my name in some sort of vague way can be carried on through the generations.
Yeah.
Just how do you feel just knowing that?
Yeah, fine, good. I'm not
Yeah.
opening the door to any more bad things happening to people.
It just literally makes no sense.
That's weird. I'm surprised that didn't make any sense.
She said a lot of sort of general things like this of like, you know, I feel like you're on another planet, or that makes literally no sense. I feel like there are a lot of just these sort of vague things that we just put out there.
I could sympathize with the you're on another planet thing. Antinatalism is a fringe philosophy. It's counterintuitive. You know, I get that one, but this, what you just explained, I feel like I'm not too sure where the disconnect was. That it seemed it didn't make sense to her, and I have no idea how to reframe that to make it sensible. Yeah. Just gonna play that again.
Knowing that.
Yeah, fine, good. I'm not opening the door to any more bad things happening to people.
It just literally makes no sense.
I mean, most people that I interact with have the same view as you. So, like, you've never met anyone who thinks my way, and literally everyone I meet thinks your way.
Are you a lonely child?
So you pausing?
No. Did you have a good?
No, my I don't know what's going on, honestly. This did well the first time we did it, but yeah, it's kind of messing up, and I'm not too sure if it's my internet or the computer. So to my viewers, I apologize.
Well, while we're paused, I will say one thing.
Sure.
On the whole, like when I watched this back, and to be honest, at the time, I did feel a bit. I don't know if arrogant is the right word, but like I felt a bit, even though it's true, I thought it was bad optics, is when I was saying here, and then I say at the end as well, that, you know, like, I've met so many people, I mean, nearly everyone I've ever met has had the same view as her, and she's never met anyone that's had the view that I had. And I mean, it looks a bit there, like I'm saying, like I'm trying to make out like I'm special, like, oh, you've never met anyone like me. I was referring to something she said earlier, which wasn't put in the clip, when she'd actually said that she'd never met anyone that thought like I did before. So I was referring to that. So it comes across like more arrogant than it was. But the whole thing of like, oh yeah, I meet so many people who think the same way as you, whilst is true, like I do acknowledge that it kind of comes off a bit like it's bad optics. It makes you look like a bit, you know, full of yourself or whatever.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Literally everyone I meet thinks your way.
Are you a lonely child?
No, I have a sister.
No. Did you have a good childhood? Like.
Yeah. Everyone thinks anyone who has this view was abused as a child or.
I feel like she was trying to psychologize it there, because even though I said like, oh yeah, everyone who thinks this way, you know, is assumed to have had a bad childhood, and she says no, not at all. I feel like if I'd have said that I'd had a bad childhood, she would have definitely like focused in on that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Even though she was trying to play like, you know, oh no, I didn't mean that at all. I feel like she probably was aiming for that.
Yeah.
No, not even that. If you had a good childhood, then you know what it feels like to experience joy and memories.
Yeah, as someone who exists, but if I was never born, I would have never have missed that.
So what would you?
I like that point, by the way. I feel like that makes sense. Yeah.
As someone who exists, but if I was never born, I would have never have missed that.
So what would you say to me if I was the one that was looking for a surrogate?
Well, I would think you shouldn't, and I would say, like, if you want to have a child and raise them, adopt.
I'm also glad that you mentioned that too. It kind of, I don't know. Some people assume that antinatalism implies necessarily child-free, and it doesn't have to be that way. We're not against having kids. It's against.
We're not against kids in general.
Right. We're not. Yeah. It's about creating kids, but like you can adopt. Now it's difficult in some, like actually going through that process, but we're not against that. That's what I'm trying to put out there.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add, just, I mean, presumably everyone that watches this video will be antinatalist anyway, but maybe not. I think one of the reasons that there's this sort of perception of like kid hating is, I mean, one is because there is some kid hating in the community, but two is because everyone that is created is obviously created as a kid. And so I think that they sort of become synonymous with creating life and having a child specifically. And I think we kind of need to like pull those apart, because even if like through reproduction we created fully grown adults and kids didn't even exist, it would still be just as unethical. But I think just because of the way biology is and the fact that we give, you know, when we procreate, we create someone in sort of, you know, a smaller, more vulnerable form. I think when you oppose that, it's sort of like you end up being perceived as disliking that group of humans when that just isn't the case.
How would you distangle that?
Well, I mean, maybe, like, honestly, maybe you can't, because I see so many examples in the world of concepts that are communicated, but, you know, in a very specific way, but when they are, you know, injected into the mainstream, they get so misinterpreted and end up being understood in a completely different way from how they were intended. So maybe it's, you know, maybe we're just fucked. I don't know. Maybe we're just doomed to be the child haters of the world. I don't know.
Oh, I really hope not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess, yeah, I don't know. I try to communicate that when I do talk about this, that we're not child haters and we're not against having kids. It's about the act of procreation, or creating into existence. But yeah, I feel like this isn't really like a philosophy thing. It's more just optics and like like marketing or PR kind of thing, where like, how do you make sure that's clear? I don't know. If anybody has any tips or advice, like, comment below.
I was going to say one maybe sort of like one subtle, is it linguistical way that you can kind of pull them apart is stop referring to it as having kids and start referring to it as creating a new 100% individual or something like that. Because because then if you say, you know, having kids, it's sort of not really focusing in on the actual issue at hand, which is creating new sentient life, and it's more taking aim at a sort of institution of, you know, having a child and the whole experience or whatever that people get from that. Whereas if you really focus in and remove the sort of human emotion or whatever and just say creating a new life, well, yeah, you are talking about having a kid, but you've really focused in and you've sort of sanitized the language so that it can't really bleed into any misinterpretation, I guess.
Yeah, I'm 100% in agreement with that. Yeah. And I think I talked to Les, and I feel like he's sort of in alignment with that too. He was, I I'm not too sure what his example was, but I think he mentioned something similar.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I've had debates with many people, but that was something else. I just feel more sad for him, really, that just at a young age, he's made such a life-changing decision. Just frustrated with all the...
It's just like picking up again on the fact that she'd had 4 kids by the time she was 21. But
negativity about why you shouldn't have children and not the positive side of what you should enjoy. I'd rather have kids. 100% life is here to be lived, and I can't wait to have more children.
We don't agree, but I enjoyed it. I do understand where people are coming from. This is a topic where I'm so often confronted by the opposing view that if I would have heard anything by now that would make me change my...
yeah, I just feel in like this outro bit, I just came off so fucking arrogant, to be honest.
Did you? Oh.
I don't know. That's how I perceive it. Like if I was watching this and I wasn't me and I was watching me now, I would kind of think like, I don't know, like the way this guy is talking. And I honestly didn't mean it in that way at all. And I didn't mean for it to come across like that. I mean, maybe it didn't. Maybe everyone would disagree with me, but I just feel like it did come across a bit like that.
Yeah, I didn't get that, but it's hard because like I have a bias towards antinatalism, and so sometimes it's difficult to see like how this would look from an outsider's perspective. But yeah, it's the only thing that really got to me was like at the very start, and that was poor editing. But so
I think it was purposeful editing.
Yeah.
Mind, I think I would have heard it. I would rather have no biological children, but I'm perfectly up for adopting someone.
Again, glad that you mentioned that again. I think it really separates us from some of the other schools of thought, like the child-free stuff. So, and focuses it more on the ethics of creating sentient life. That's what I get out of it. Yeah. Okay, so that's it. Okay. What was missed in that 2-hour conversation?
Well, I went into the asymmetry in quite a lot more detail, and we talked a lot more about the difference between existence and non-existence. Like quite a lot, actually. We kept on coming back to that, and none of that was put in. I also talked about, I talked more about, I kind of used the risk argument in it, in that clip, but I went more in depth on the risk argument and did, how we were saying, like, how she was saying, why are you focusing on the negatives?
Yeah.
Like in the 2-hour conversation, I did acknowledge the positives. And I said, even if you acknowledge all the positive things in life, I still don't think it's justified. And I was using the risk argument for that. I also used the imposition argument as well. What else was missed? Well, another key thing that was missed is that we really got on, like, just as two people. So I don't think that comes across in the video, because obviously they, there's the music and stuff that they put, and the way they edited it. But yeah, we did get on, and even after the cameras went off, we were talking for a while, just about, like, I was asking her more about the process of like the surrogacy she went through and stuff. So yeah, I would say those are the main things that were missed.
Cool. All right. Well, overall, I thought it was a positive thing. My only gripe was at that first second or two. But overall, I think you presented yourself really well, and yeah, congratulations on getting that coverage.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Was there anything else you wanted to say before we wrap up?
One thing I would also say, which is, I think they did it on purpose, which I don't mind, but I just found it was kind of funny, and I didn't think they would. It didn't occur to me that this sort of thing would happen. But like, I don't know, I'm the sort of person where I do like a lot of weird things with my face. Like I move my mouth in a certain way, or like my eyebrows, or like I blink in weird ways. And they always fucking focused in on it whenever I did that. Like there's so many times where
I didn't notice that at all.
You didn't notice it?
No, no.
There's so many times where they cut to me and I'm doing like, or something like that.
I don't. I'll have to
Watch it again with that in mind later,
Yeah.
and yeah.
All right. All right. Well, thanks again for coming on the channel and reviewing that video with me. Yeah, it's been fun.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Cheers.
Bye bye.